back, everybody, to the Triad of the Force podcast, a podcast from Puerto Rican friends coming together to do deep dives into Star Wars and other nerd related media. This is the first episode of season 5. We are
5.
very excited.
Holy
And as
crap.
always, we are a Star Wars podcast, so we're going to be discussing some news that has dropped that is interesting. But really, the bulk of our conversation today is going to be about Rebel Moon Part 1, which is Zack Snyder's attempt to remake Star Wars and Samurai 7, or I don't really know what to call it except for bad.
It was
But
something. It was something. It was something. It was an experience. Let's put it that
oh,
way.
not a good one. But that's just my opinion, and we'll get into it. But we did get some news about Star Wars. Want to talk about it, Goose?
Yeah, and before we get going into everything, season 5. Holy crap! Like
I
how
know.
time has flown. I never thought. Well, I always thought that we would do season 1. I was very happy to see that we finished that one, and then we did
Yeah,
a second one. But it's kind of mind blowing to think that
yeah.
we
We're
started
already
this
at 5. Mhm.
2019. It's already, yeah, season 5. That how time has flown. This started during COVID. Now we're in a completely different world full of wars in the Middle East. And like, what's going
And we still
on,
have
man?
COVID and
And we
influenza
still have
and
COVID. Obviously, still get your vaccinations, kids.
yeah,
But wow, like how, like I'm still like
been crazy.
I'm grappling with time and how insane this journey has been. You're now in your final year of
Of law school
law
last
school.
semester.
Oh my god, that's a
Yeah.
oh, I can't believe it. So with that, happy New Year to everybody. We haven't recorded or talked to anybody since our last episode for the holiday. So a couple
Yeah.
weeks off. So it feels good. Feels good
Yeah.
to be back.
I know. It's
How are
nice.
you? How are your holidays?
It was good. I mean, I was working actually, so it wasn't like I could yeah, because I kind of took a month off during like before and during finals and stuff. So my bosses were on vacation, so it's like, oh, can you just like keep an eye out, blah blah blah. So I was actually working, and then my sister has 2 babies, so
Oh
she's
my
really
god.
strict about the hanging outs and because of people getting sick and so
See, when
it's
we
kind of
when we started when we started, there were 0 babies.
yeah. And now there's like three, 2 nieces and 1 nephew, like
Jesus.
in less than 2 years. It's
That's
insane.
it's
It's insane.
oh my god. What does that say about us? I don't know. I don't know what
I
it says. It's
I don't care what it says about me.
I guess it's wild because I still feel
Yeah, I got
like
married. I'm done. That's all I was gonna do. No
yeah.
kids for me.
And your anniversary was fairly recently, so
Yeah,
congratulations on that.
that was my wedding
Uh,
was fun.
it was, and it was Star Wars themed before the podcast. There was,
Yeah,
I remember there was like the Darth Vader and Stormtrooper little cakes
yeah.
as mementos for all of us to take back. So the force was strong, even
Even
even back
before the
then,
podcast.
even before the podcast. The podcast
Mhm.
is just an external manifestation now of like the things we always had
Loved. Yeah,
in our hearts.
yeah.
But speaking of things that are close to our hearts, there was a big bit of Star Wars news, and it's everyone's favorite little baby Yoda, Grogu, who has stolen everyone's hearts, is headed to the big screen.
Yeah.
Lucasfilm announced this week. I forgot what day it was. I know what day it was. It was Tuesday because that's when we relaunched our podcast identity and redesigned our logo and did all these things to kind of rebrand the podcast. And then Star Wars was like, no, 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 this is not about you.
Yeah.
It's about us. And then they dropped the news basically at the same time that we dropped the announcement for like our podcast rebranding. So thank you, Star Wars, for stealing our thunder, especially with Baby Grogu, with Baby Yoda slash
There's no
Grogu.
competing.
But yeah, they announced the Mandalorian and Grogu, which I really hope that that's not the actual final name of the movie, because that's a weak
Yeah,
name.
yeah,
It's like, can we move away from just naming every show after the character that it's about? It's Andor,
yeah.
Ahsoka,
Hmm.
Obi-Wan Kenobi. Let's
Kenobi.
just let's just get some cool names. This name, I know that it's the easiest way to market it so that people immediately
Know what it
understand what
is?
it's
Yeah.
about. But
Hmm.
come on, we Star Wars
We
has
can
always
try a
had
little
cool names.
harder.
We
Yeah.
have A New
Hmm.
Hope, The Empire Strikes Back, Return of the Jedi, Revenge of the Sith, Attack of the Clone. We have so many cool names, and now we're
Yeah.
just like going, come on,
Yeah.
Star
The
Wars.
character is named this.
Yeah, it's like you're not gonna call. Yeah, you're not gonna. You're not gonna call a show Din Djarin and Din Grogu or the Dins. I don't know.
The
It's like
Dins.
I don't know.
The Dins family vacation.
The Dins. Yeah, that would be good. Actually, I would go see that movie. But yeah, they announced that Jon Favreau gonna direct, which I think is gonna be great because he directed The Marshal, and that was one of the best episodes of The Mandalorian. Period.
Yeah.
Uh, Dave Filoni is producer, helping out with the script. Uh, I think it's gonna come out. I think it's gonna be the first movie now, based on what we know. It's gonna be the first movie to come out of the new, batch of films that have been announced. But yeah, like, Natalie, what was your initial reaction when you heard this news? Because I know I was kind of surprised by it, considering that I wasn't expecting more movie news, considering that we have enough movies to look forward to.
Yeah. Yeah. And I still honestly I was really surprised. I wasn't expecting Mando to make it into the big screen. I mean, we knew that there was gonna be kind of, I guess, an Avengers ending kind of thing to
Hmm.
all the Filoniverse, but I wasn't expecting really for just like Mandalorian film. You know.
Hmm.
So and I don't know how I really feel about it, honestly. I don't know. I mean, part of the reason I think that The Mandalorian was so successful is because of the format of the TV
Hmm.
show. And I think it's very difficult to bring a show and then you have this pacing already established and trying to translate it into film. I think it's gonna be hard. So I don't I don't know how I feel about it, to be completely honest. How about you?
It's in, and you make a good point. Like, it's
Yeah.
interesting because we were under the impression, when I say we, I mean the royal we, and mostly me
Hmm.
because I'm giving this opinion, and it's my opinion, that the event film, right, that was like our Avengers Endgame
Yeah.
thing, was going to be the Filoni movie. And that's where
Right.
all the, Mandoverse stuff, they were going to
Hmm.
converge there. And I wonder if this was kind of a twofold decision type of thing. One, the cynical marketing decision. It's like, well, we need to get Star Wars back on the big screen.
Right.
Mandalorian and Grogu are our
Our
biggest
biggest. Hmm.
biggest characters right now that like everyone and their mother recognizes. So let's just
Hmm.
do a movie about that so that we can get butts and seats because everyone knows about that. That's
Yeah.
one side of the equation. On the other side of the equation, I wonder if that was also kind of a story thing where as they were developing the Filoni film, it's like too much stuff was in
Yeah.
it. It's just like how the because again, yeah, like that's the things that I'm kind of wondering about. It's like how you're gonna bring like Mando into like this uh, Thrawn thing. If the Thrawn thing's gonna be like more heir to the Empire focus with Ahsoka and probably Luke, it's gonna
Right.
be. So it's just like there
So
were a
what's the
lot of
standalone movie gonna be?
right.
Yeah.
So I'm just like I feel like maybe it was the thing. It's like well, we can't really think Mando fits into the story comfortably. So maybe let's just put him in his own movie, and then have that movie be kind of like a not a prequel, but the lead up
Yeah.
to the other
Yeah.
movie type of thing. It's like, does that make
So
sense? I
kind
don't
of
know.
like the prologue, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Uh huh.
It's that. Yeah. So I don't know. It's one of
I don't
those
know.
things where I'm just like, I want to see new Star
Yeah.
Wars.
Hmm.
I That's why I'm excited for the James Mangold Dawn of the Jedi.
Yeah.
I'm
Hmm.
excited for the Acolyte.
The
I'm
Acolyte.
excited for the Ray movie. So, I'm excited for films that are gonna be doing something that are things that we haven't seen
Yeah.
before, or
Yeah.
that are gonna take the story in directions that we're not familiar with.
Yeah.
So this Filoni movie and now the Mandalorian and Grogu movie. Like, not that I'm not excited for them. I'm always excited for new Star Wars, and new
Yeah.
Star Wars is better than no Star Wars.
And like you
Uh,
said, John Favreau is amazing. So
Yeah, but
mhm.
at the end of the day, I'm just
I'm gonna
like,
be cautiously optimistic,
yeah,
but that's as much as I can be, I think.
and it'll even if it's not amazing, I'm sure it'll be fun
Yeah.
because
Hmm.
despite everything, we were relatively critical of Mando season 3,
Yeah.
but it was still enjoyable. It was still
Yeah.
a show that had fun moments, and we still sat down and watched it.
I
And
liked it more than Mando season 2.
really,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Mando season 1 is still the best by
Mando
far.
season
But
one is the best by far, hands
mhm.
down. If you only take Mando season one, that's one
Mhm.
of the it's like I think number two in my list of Star Wars shows. Obviously, Andor being one,
Andor being first, yeah.
and then Mando season one being two. I would say that. because then season I don't know. We've talked about ad
Yeah.
nauseum about.
We will see how everything gets reshuffled when the second season of Andor and when Acolyte comes out, because I think those two shows are
Oh
contenders.
yeah, baby. And that was the kind of covert announcement that they did as well, because at the end of the press release for Mandalorian and Grogu, they also announced that Ahsoka season 2 is in development. So
To the
confirmed.
surprise of nobody.
The surprise of nobody, but it wasn't confirmed. So it's just
I
kind of
know.
like it's
I
like
know. A little
let's
cherry on top, but it was
right.
still. I remember I saw it, but I was like, yeah, to the surprise of nobody. We
And then
knew
they
there
released
was,
that little
yeah.
sketch of Dave Filoni of like the Argonath, and it's just like the finger
Uh huh.
of the father, and then Sabina and Ahsoka standing on top. And I'm just like, beautiful. Let's keep going with the Lord of the Rings,
I'm okay with that
iconography,
too.
which
Yeah.
I'm okay with. I just
Yeah.
hope that they push it even further now. It's like just
hmm
lean into mystical
Well, yeah, and
fantasy
they
stuff.
pulled off more mystical than most Star Wars. So now
Yeah.
that they know that it can actually work in a format that isn't just animation, I really hope that they do keep pushing the envelope on
I
that
just want it. Yeah, I
in
just
the
want it to
future.
get weirder.
Yeah, yeah, I agree.
Right,
hmm
because right now it's not. It's almost weird enough, but it just needs to
It's
do the
still,
full
yeah,
punch.
I
So
agree.
I'm excited for that. The big
hmm
question for that is Balin Skull, and what are they gonna do with that
Yeah,
character? I just
yeah,
hope that they recast him, because I think that character, Ray Stevenson,
deserves,
did such
yeah,
a good job with
hmm
it that it's a character that deserves to continue.
I
So
agree.
hopefully they recast him respectfully, obviously, and continue that character's journey, especially because like it was left as a cliffhanger in terms of like what the character was gonna do. So I'm
Yeah.
excited for Ahsoka season 2. Not as much as Acolyte, but
hmm We can have our favorites.
we can have our favorite. But exactly,
Yeah,
but let's not be. Yeah, it's one of those things that I think is interesting
yeah,
about discourse, that people, just because they might not like a thing or not like it as much as something else, then that they have to invalidate someone else because they like
yeah.
that thing more than.
hmm
This is like let's just
Well, and you
be
were
fun.
had like no expectations for Andor,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
now it's like
yeah.
your favorite of all the shows.
I was
So,
very cynical. I was very cynical
mhm.
about Andor.
Yeah, you
I
see,
will be the
lesson
first one to
learned.
admit it. Yeah, sometimes we have to. Sometimes we have to get our own heads out of our own asses,
Yeah.
because sometimes we just lodge our heads really tight up in that sphincter, and we just gotta get that WD-40 and just get it out, and touch some grass. It's very important to do that.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's a evolving process. We learn to do it
hmm
slowly. I mean, we never stop learning, because
Very true.
every once in a while we put our heads back up there.
Yeah.
You just have
And
to
they need to
remind
be
ourselves.
re-dislodged.
Read dislodged. Yes, that's why we need our friends. That's why we need each other to keep ourselves in check. Uh, but enough about George Lucas's legacy of Star Wars. Let's go into the
Zack Snyder's attempt
the
at
meat
Star
and
Wars.
potatoes of today with Zack Snyder, the Snyder Wars, as this episode is going to be called. Uh,
The Snyder Wars.
so, for those who remember, Zack Snyder, a couple of years ago or whatever, like had done a pitch to Kathleen Kennedy about his version of a Star Wars film, and he was promptly
Rejected.
rejected for his idea. So he decided that that was actually a blessing in disguise for him, because then he can just make it however he wants to do it without
hmm
having to have the
Lucasfilm
limitations
interference.
of Lucasfilm, for better or worse. You'll be the judge of it. And now, fast forward all this time, and here we are. Zack Snyder's Rebel Moon Part 1, whatever the hell the subtitle is out. It's on Netflix.
A child of fire.
A Child of Fire. There was no fire in that movie, ladies and gentlemen.
Except
And
for the really badly executed lightsabers.
it was just it,
I know we're trying to be kind, but there's just no way.
I like Zack Snyder. Let me
Yeah.
start saying that I like Zack Snyder. I like his director's cut of Justice League. I thought was good. I know it's controversial, but I actually liked
hmm
it. I love 300. I
Yeah.
know that also it's controversial to say, but I really like Watchmen, especially the director's cut.
Yeah.
Uh, he's very hit and miss. It's either you like it or you don't.
hmm
But I kind of was hopeful, for this, because I was like, okay, we deserve a new sci-fi fantasy thing
Yeah.
that can live with Star Trek and Star Wars, and kind of be
hmm
this thing that we can also enjoy in a separate way, and have it be different too, because I don't think we've ever had violence and gritty
Yeah.
sci-fi. Okay, someone's gonna correct me and say like Alien
It's
franchise
whatever.
or
Yeah.
Terminator, but shut the fuck up. We're talking. We're talking about, and I mean that respectfully. I'm sorry. We're talking about
Dune has violence and grit.
true, true, but it's
Yeah.
it's fantastical. And
Yeah.
I feel
Hmm.
like that's what makes like Rebel Moon different is that it feels too grounded. It feels too earth. It feels too, it doesn't feel detached enough from
Yeah.
the present for me to suspend my disbelief and feel like I'm in this fantastical world. But
Yeah.
we'll get to like those nitpicks slash minutia later. I want to hear since unfortunately you watched it because I told you to watch it, and
Yeah.
I feel responsible for that. I apologize. I wanna know your thoughts about the movie. But be fair. I mean, don't filter yourself, but also be fair.
Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna try. It was terrible. Yeah.
I'm gonna try. It was terrible.
It was terrible. Yeah. So I didn't know what to expect because you didn't tell me really what it was, and you know that my social media game is like non-existent,
Mhm.
so I didn't go in with any expectations whatsoever. And then I watched it yesterday. Actually, started watching it yesterday. I couldn't get through it in one sitting. Uh, I got like halfway through and I was like, I can't keep watching this. I need to like go to sleep or something and maybe look at it with new eyes tomorrow. And it did not help. And I think the last movie that happened was with Wonder Woman 1994 that me and Husband just could not get
Oh
through it in
Lord.
one sitting. And the difference is that I was, with Wonder Woman, because I love the first one so much, I just kept waiting for it to get better, It just never did, which is so sad. But this one, I didn't even care how it ended. I only continued to watch it because we were gonna talk about it today. Like I didn't feel attached really to any of the characters, so I didn't really care how it ended. Um, I think the best things about it, like character wise, were the clip that Carrie Elwes is the king, which I kind of really enjoyed, and then
Mhm,
that C3PO kind of character,
the
you know?
best character, Anthony Hopkins' character, the best one,
Yeah.
and we didn't get anything from him.
Yeah. And then it's just like a screenshot of him like at the end after he started developing this really cool droid character. Yeah, but I didn't care about the other ones. They kept repeating like for each one what their role was in the past, but you didn't get
Mhm,
anything emotional from
right,
any of them.
right,
So
right.
it's like it could have been like half an hour shorter. And if you cut out all the slow motion stuff, it
Mhm,
probably would have been half an hour shorter. I mean, like you were saying, I liked 300 a lot. It was
mhm,
cool, the slow motion back then, but that
mhm,
was
mhm.
almost 20 years ago. Come up with
Oh,
something new,
don't
Zack
say
Snyder,
that.
please.
I hate hearing 20 years ago because
Almost 20 years ago.
for me 20 years ago means the 80s.
No. It means the 2000s.
Shut up.
Yes. We are getting that old, Goose. Get
No.
over it.
Stop. Stop.
Yes.
That's
We are
horrible.
80s children. Mhm. But yeah, so it's been so long, and the slow motion just it detracted so much from the action sometimes. And he really has to cool it with the lens flare too. Like there was
Mhm.
lens flare with the lightsabers against every fucking sorry, every surface, every every like blaster. It was way too shiny. You could barely look at the screen sometimes. And it just some things were this wasn't his version of Star Wars. This was straight up a Star Wars like imitation game. I mean,
Mhm,
he
mhm.
basically redid the cantina scene.
Yeah, yeah.
That
Which was a good
monologue,
scene though.
it was a good scene, but it's a ripoff
Yeah.
of Star Wars. The like the initial monologue was basically a crawl.
Right.
And
Yes.
it's literally, oh, it wasn't the destruction of a republic, it was a monarchy that's getting destroyed, but the senator now comes into power and he sent his biggest badass to go hunt rebels. Rebel
Mhm.
Moon. I was like, what? You
Yeah.
seriously just set up the Emperor and Darth Vader, and then Darth Vader, noble the guy was, he was also partly mechanical, and then you have him like falling, and then this time it's like into water, not lava. But it's there were so many parallels. And then the character Korra and who the emperor is supposed to be, it's actually they have like this Gamora Thanos relationship. I
Hmm.
destroyed your planet, and I take you in, and now you're my daughter. I mean, he was ripping off everything left and right. We know that Star Wars stole from Dune and stole from Seven Samurai, but this wasn't even trying to be subtle about it. This was
No.
just like in your face. I'm ripping this off, and here it's new, but it wasn't. Sorry, I ranted. I'm done.
No, no, no. Please, please, by all means. That's why we're here. That's why all two people that listen to this podcast tune in to hear
Oh
specifically
wow.
your ranting. But I don't disagree with a lot. And like I said, I was kind of hopeful going into the movie because, like,
Yeah,
I don't want things to fail.
I know. I know.
I want art to be successful because like this is art, and Zack Snyder, is one of those people that like have at least have has the balls to do uncompromising art because like
Mhm.
everything he does is exactly what he wants to do, which
Right.
I absolutely respect. uh, but see, I don't mind the whole like being inspired by something because every at this point in in life, everything's inspired by something because like everything's
Yeah.
been done, right? So everything's a
Mhm.
reinterpretation of a reinterpretation. uh, so in that sense, like I was expecting, right, to see the parallels with Star Wars, but I would have hoped for a little more transformation
Yeah.
for it.
A little bit more originality.
Yeah. And one thing that you were saying that I think is one of the things that I started getting a little dubious about, right, when the movie is starting, is that opening crawl, because I was just like, this is too much exposition. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
the cool thing about Star Wars is that yes, it implies a past, it implies a
Yeah.
history. It kind of gives you enough to for you to understand the gist of everything,
Mhm.
but still keep it vague enough to understand the vastness of it and
Yeah.
the fantasy of it too as well, right? And I feel like Zack Snyder, especially in this movie, was over explaining things to an extent that
Yeah.
like made it feel very clinical and everything was exposition and we
Yeah.
were being told a lot and not being
Yeah.
shown anything.
Yeah.
And
Which we complain about so often that show don't tell is so
right,
important, and they were just telling us shit over and over and over, and it was like a lot of uh like oratory too, like one character talking by themselves, giving this speech about something, and there wasn't like actual conversations happening
right.
between the characters. It was so weird.
And even when you got like a flashback to show something, you still had the character have
Explain it
voiceover
again.
over it, and it's like, Jesus fucking Christ, I get it.
We can see it on the screen.
And then it's like, the flashbacks were not compelling at all because like you're not really
Yeah.
getting enough backstory to care about it, because the minute you
Yeah.
saw the flashback, it's just okay, it's over and whatever.
Hmm.
So it's just like, so what was the point of all this? So I feel like the movie was trying to do too much explaining and not a lot of doing, because then the part that I felt was the strongest was the beginning, when they're in the planet,
The village. Yeah.
in the
Hmm.
agricultural planet. I feel
Yeah.
that was the best part of the film, because it was the most original to an extent, even though it's not original because it's still
Seven Samurai.
the
Yeah.
farm girl for
Hmm.
discovering her destiny, blah blah blah. Even though she's always known that she's a badass, so it's kind of different from Luke in that sense. Uh,
Right.
but at least you have like this uh, world where like they reject technology because they the value of doing
Yeah.
things with their hands. So I thought that was really cool. But then like all of a sudden you get the space Nazis show up, and they're dressed. There's not even subtle. They're dressed exactly like
Yep.
Nazis slash Soviets.
Yeah.
It's like not apparently
Plus, Bando
fashion.
was just like, if they actually have an SS written on their uniforms,
Right.
I'm like, that's all you need.
And this is a nitpick, but it's a major one for me because I'm a design nerd. One of the things that
Right.
I really like about Star Wars and a lot of science fiction and fantasy and stuff is like how they're able to obviously get inspired by
Yeah.
real human history
Yeah.
things, but then transform it so that
Yeah. And
you can
add to
still
it. Yeah.
get the shorthand of what they're referring to, because if you look at the First Order and the Empire, clearly like their uniforms and stuff are being
Mhm.
inspired by World War II uniforms and stuff like that, but they're still transformed enough where they become kind of their
Their
own
own
thing.
thing. Yeah.
And I
Mhm.
feel like this film didn't do that at all. It's just like, okay, there's no shorthand. It's hand basically.
Yeah.
It's like they're just it's like
That. They're
it's
that.
just a uniform.
Mhm.
It's like here we
Yep.
go. Here's a 1920s, 30s, whatever uniform from the Soviet Union or
Mhm.
Nazi Germany, and like bam,
Yeah.
and they're in
And
space
here.
now,
Here you
and it
go.
and it takes me out of the moment because I'm just like, oh, it's like, oh, so this is not the future,
Yeah.
it's like, and they're wearing ties. It's like the ties threw me off. I mean, it's like there's no ties in space. That's the past, buddy. Uh,
There's no ties
so
in space.
so I know that that's a major nitpick. I know most people don't care what these people are wearing, but for me, like having those
But it's
uniforms
really
be
important. I think
so
costume design is
yes,
really
yes,
important to keep
I
you
agree.
in the moment. And then the stormtroopers themselves, like the armor was so boring looking. I
Yeah, yeah,
mean,
yeah.
they didn't seem menacing at all. It was weird. It was weird.
It was because it was. I mean, I don't want to discredit the designers because
Right.
obviously they're doing their job and they're doing the
Right.
best that they can,
Mhm.
but it felt very I felt like there were some baffling decisions in that sense to like keep everything way too similar to how things are now.
Yeah.
That for me like removed me from
The ships as well. I didn't like the design of the ships.
did you feel that the ships were too similar to the ones from Man of Steel? Because I'm just like, is this like Kryptonian ships?
Yeah, I feel like Zack Snyder was also ripping himself off.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, not just like all these other things, but he was ripping himself off. I mean, that one scene where the like rebel leader jumps off that's straight up from 300. That
300.
is like
Yeah,
frame from frame a scene
yeah.
from 300. I was like, dude, you're even ripping yourself off?
Yeah, 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 yeah. It's almost a parody of himself in it to an extent.
It's baffling. At a
But
moment I started to think like, is this supposed to be a parody?
I think some of the best parody is parody that doesn't know that it's a parody, and I think this is kind of
This is
becoming
kind of it.
a parody that we it's Spaceballs Part Two in a way, you know. But yeah, and it's weird because the same way I'm saying that the ships look too much like the ones from Man of Steel, it's almost a quasi compliment because in Man of Steel, like all the sequences in Krypton, I really liked. I really
Yeah, so
liked
did I.
the
Yep.
design of Krypton, like how
Yeah.
all the ships were, how all everything looked. So I think like that visual aesthetic of the alienness of Krypton in that film, I thought really worked. So kind of to see it in this film was weird because then I'm like, why did it work there but not
And
here?
now, yeah, because the design kind of changed and it made them kind of more functional looking. I don't know if that's it,
Yeah.
instead of making them look a little bit more actually futuristic.
Hmm.
I don't know. There was something strange
I
about it. I
don't
saw
know.
it,
Yeah.
but then they kept the ramps almost exactly like the ones from Star
Oh
Wars.
yeah. Oh
So
yeah. The same
I was
shot
just
of the
like,
steam coming down the ramp. I'm just like, okay, I
yeah,
got it, buddy.
it,
It was truly a baffling film.
I was so confused. I was like,
Well, and the problem too, and you mentioned it at the beginning
mhm,
of
rant.
your of your
Yeah.
review.
Uh-huh.
Was it's obviously very Seven Samurai,
Yeah.
unapologetically so. And to
Hmm.
be fair, Star Wars has done Seven Samurai 1,000 times,
Oh,
and the
yeah.
Clone Wars, and the Mandalorian,
Oh, yeah. And the Bad Batch.
and the Bad Batch. So
Hmm.
it's so Star Wars has done it too. So it's not as
Yeah.
if Star Wars is blameless and
Yeah.
ripping off that.
Right.
But
I know.
here it was so again, it's about transforming things. And here it wasn't transformed at all.
Yeah.
But what made it to me more problematic was that that sequence of like gathering all the heroes that are gonna save the
Yeah.
village felt like a montage. It's just like
Yeah.
it felt very detached from a linear story, right?
Yeah.
It's like in the three arc structure of a film. This felt like it was kind of like a tangent.
Yeah.
It felt very episodic. It felt like a show. It felt like a Mandalorian type of thing.
Well,
You
yeah. And
know,
then it was
it's
like,
like bam, and then movie's over.
I know. And it also felt like it was a checklist. Like, you don't go out on this grand adventure and you have like numbered how many people you're actually gonna get. I mean, it started felt to feel like a checklist. Oh, I got my one, I got my two. How many are we down to? Do we have all seven yet? Are we
Right.
done? It was crazy. Husbando this morning was like, how many were we up to when we decided to go to bed? Four, five? I was like, wow, that's how it makes you feel that you're just like collecting these warriors.
You're collecting Infinity Stones, but way
Yeah,
less
yeah,
interesting. Actually,
yeah.
the Infinity Stones probably have more personality than
Then these
those characters.
warriors. Yeah,
Because then those characters don't have any character traits to them.
yeah,
They're just a caricature
yeah.
of a trope, and you
Hmm.
don't get to. And again, it's because the movie is so takes so long for some things that then you don't have time to develop those characters. So I
Yeah.
thought it was always funny that you go into the planet, find
Mm.
the
Yeah.
person does something badass, and then we move on to the next thing.
To the next one.
And then in the next one, like the other character you picked up before has no interaction with anybody. So
No,
like
they don't even
so
speak. Yeah.
none
It's
of
not like
these.
you're building a community as it's happening. No,
Right,
you're just like
exactly. There's no
you're
family.
collecting warriors. Yeah.
You're collecting warriors. They're not a family. They don't talk to each other. It's a. Exactly. There's no. These samurai don't have any found family. They're just like cogs in a machine, and then
Yeah.
they do like their little battle at the end. That was very underwhelming. The one character dies, and I felt nothing when he
Nothing
died because
at
I'm just
all.
like, well, I had no idea who you are.
And
So
he
like,
was
why
supposed to
should
be
I
like the
care?
revolutionary leader, the one that started the whole movement. And then when like his group of misfits like detaches, are like, oh, he has his own bad batch. It's awesome, yay! And then they all die except like for the one woman. So
Right.
the only ones that had like found family, let's just murder all of them
Yeah.
because it makes
Basically.
sense for some reason that I can't.
And then the movie ends. And then the
Yeah,
movie ends. It's like they get to the planet and that's it. I'm just like, oh,
and that's
oh,
it.
okay. There's literally no. It felt like an episode of Netflix. Like this is just the ending of this episode, and now,
Yeah, and now
like,
we're going to episode two.
and you're getting the little thing at the bottom of the screen. Are you still watching? Next episode, and with the countdown, so that you hit it, and then the next one
Yep.
starts. But no,
Mhm.
because this is a movie, and now we have to wait a couple months before the next film comes out. So
But there was no coherence in it as a standalone film.
no. But did you know? Because I didn't tell you this. I don't know if you know this.
Mm.
Uh, maybe you do, and maybe you expected it. But did you know that there's going to be a Snyder cut of the movie that's even longer,
Of course there is. There's always the fucking Snyder cut.
which I feel is very disingenuous to like
Because
have
this
done that.
time you didn't have the pushback that was the reason
Exactly,
for the director's cuts previously because you had
exactly,
pushback from creators, you had pushback from studios, and then you wanted it how you wanted it, and then you get your
exactly.
director's cut. I understand that. But this
Hmm.
one, from the beginning, you got to do it how you wanted. So
Hmm. Hmm.
so what? You're just banking on double release to cash in more money?
Exactly, exactly. That's exactly it. And it's I mean it's smart to an extent from on Netflix's part because they're trying to capitalize on the whole Snyder Cut movement and release the Snyder Cut. It's like, oh, now we have our Snyder Cut. It's like it's the rebel. Tune into Netflix so you can see the new Snyder Cut of this. But it's like exactly, you don't need it. It's
Yeah.
streaming. You can make a movie as long as you want. You can
Yeah.
release it in however format you
Many
want.
parts you want. Yeah.
So like the fact that like this was kind of cooked into the marketing for it is cynical, and we know that all Hollywood
Right.
studios are cynical and that stuff. Fine, but it's like it's one of those things where I get if you're gonna do a director's cut later because it's so much longer than this one, but at least we made sure that the theatrical, well, it's not theatrical because this didn't come out in theaters, but the
Hmm.
main release of it is still, like a well constructed story. Then okay, maybe. But at this point, I'm just like, wait, so you just like cut off so much of this movie because I can almost guarantee you that the director's cut is gonna be like, I'm not gonna say good, but it's gonna at least fill in a lot of the things that we're complaining
Yeah.
about. There's
Hmm.
gonna be a lot more character development for all the samurai.
Yeah.
There's probably gonna be a lot more Anthony Hopkins' robot character, which we'll get to in a minute because he was the only good thing in the movie. Uh,
Correct.
but it's just like, why do we have to sacrifice it from the beginning? It's like, couldn't we just make a movie that made sense from?
Well, and it's already been proven that really long films and streaming work because
You can pause
the
them. You
last
can go to the bathroom.
No, and they're still successful films. Like,
Hmm.
what was it, like Scorsese's
The
previous
Irishman.
one that was like The Irishman, that was like over 3 hours long or
Hmm.
something, and was critically and acclaimed, and by
Hmm. Hmm.
the
Hmm.
people too loved it. And I think the Killers of the Flower Moon is really long too, the new DiCaprio
But that
one.
one's not good. Well,
I have no real interest in watching that one, but I'm just saying that
you
it's like,
you can miss out.
yeah,
If
yeah,
anyone wants to know about Killers of the Flower Moon, we're not gonna review it on this channel. Just go to my letterbox,
it was
read my
that
review
bad.
there. No, I mean it was good. It's Martin
Yeah,
Scorsese. Martin Scorsese does
yeah,
not make a bad movie. The
yeah,
problem is that I said we were not gonna review it, and we're reviewing it now.
yeah, uh-huh,
The problem was, to keep it short, the movie was marketed about the Osage, Osage Nation, and like
hmm,
all the stuff about what they had to go through in the
yeah,
first FBI murders, were
hmm,
those Osage murders and all that stuff. So I thought the movie was going to be a lot more focused on Lily Gladstone
yeah,
and the Native
and of course it was.
American nation and culture that is
Hmm.
being shown, and it was anything but. So I'm just like, okay, so you've
Mer
decided to focus on
Yeah,
the most boring part of the story
yeah,
and not look at like these people
yeah.
suffering and
So basically, just
stuff.
a huge missed opportunity,
Yes, absolutely, 100%. Like you could tell that Martin Scorsese was trying to do the right thing,
but it fell
eh,
through
but
somehow.
it's an
Hmm.
old white guy, you know. He can't
Yeah,
get out of his like bias of
yeah,
like how to
true.
structure
Yeah,
these films, and and it's fine. At least now that's why we have Echo and Kahori in What If season 2. We have like some great
yeah,
Native American representation in the MCU. So, but we can talk about that some other
yeah. We can talk about it later. But anyway, back to Rebel Moon, man.
time.
But yeah,
But
you're right.
that was a problem.
But I didn't know this whole that it was marketed from the beginning that there was going to be a Drexter's cut. That
Hmm. Hmm.
sounds super shady to me, honestly.
It's like the anti Lord of the Rings type of thing, because with Lord of the Rings, at least the movies were good from the beginning.
Oh yeah, they were. Now it's
So
just like we have
people are like,
extended
wait,
editions.
exactly. So people were like,
Yeah,
wait, we got a good movie to begin with, and now it's gonna be more good movie.
yeah,
Like, let's go.
yeah.
And now the extended editions are the kind of the definitive version
Ones that you watched.
of Lord of the
But yeah,
Rings.
well, and back then too, with Lord of the Rings, it was rare for movies to be so long. I
Hmm.
mean,
Hmm.
back in the olden times when it was like The Sound of Music and stuff, the really long movies had intermissions and everything.
Yeah, yeah,
So the Lord of the Rings to begin with were pretty extensive. So I'm assuming they didn't know how successful it was going to be, and that's why probably they held back those extended edition
yeah. Hmm.
versions. And then we love us some Lord of the Rings.
We love me
Talking of
some Lord of
which,
the Rings. So
everybody in fantasy steals from Tolkien. Just because you steal from Tolkien doesn't mean you can't have an original thought.
orcs
So
came
I
from
think
Tolkien. Come on, come at me, bro.
yes, yes. But then that's the problem with this. It didn't feel original in any shape or form.
The only original thing was Anthony Hopkins's robot character, which was the best part of the movie because
I
it's
mean,
like,
and it
oh,
was still kind of based on C3PO.
well, no,
So
well, yes and no. I mean,
yes and
because
no.
it's a British voice
Yeah.
on a droid, but like it's
Mhm.
an assassin droid, but the droids
Right.
decided to not follow their programming. So there's
Because
something there, but then
they've
he
lost their
recognizes.
alliance, and then
Right,
yeah.
right, right.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
then they
Mhm.
recognize that she might be the princess, which obviously she is the princess. Uh, but and then like it's like, oh shit, and then he decides to kill again after I don't know how
Yeah.
long from not killing. I'm like,
Yeah.
okay,
I'm
this is.
okay with that.
I'm like,
That's really
okay,
cool.
and obviously it's Anthony Hopkins' voice, so
And
beautiful
I
voice.
honestly really assumed that they were kind of maybe bringing it along or something as like
Right.
this is super text. And then I remember halfway through the movie, it's like, where happened to that awesome
Where's
character?
exactly,
Where did he go?
exactly, exactly. And then they just come back to the planet. He's wearing antlers, and I'm like, okay, that looks cool.
Yeah,
Why?
but
Why?
he's just
And then,
standing there.
right, it's like, why
End of
did it?
movie.
Exactly, and then boom, wait till episode 2. And I was like, God damn it.
Talking about missed opportunities.
Well, you'll see that the extended cut is gonna explain where he got the antlers.
Right, right.
And
What
I'm
he
just
was
like,
doing on the planet this whole time,
right,
defending his people.
uh, doing something. I don't fucking know. Maybe he was just finding the antlers this whole time. Like, based on like how the rest of the movie goes, it's like he wasn't doing anything. He was looking for antlers.
Nothing. Nothing. Oh man. Well, anyway, I think we've I don't think there's any more to dissect. There's really not much to this. There's
I
not a
think.
lot of depth
Uh,
either that we can kind of dive
so I
into.
think there's only two more things to do. One,
Okay. Okay.
Are we going to watch? Well, I'm going to watch them, but are we going to talk about the
I
next
can,
parts?
I we can decide later once they
Well,
come out
once
because
we watch them, it's like, okay, that was better. We can talk about it now. If they're bad, we won't. Like, there's no point in
well,
investing
the
in
thing is, I don't
negative
even know if
things.
I want to watch it.
Right. It's
It's
like
like,
let's invest on positivity here.
yeah.
And
So
so we'll see. Well, maybe we'll watch them, and if we like them, we'll talk about
yeah, yeah.
it. So that's one. And then the other one is just like, okay, what made Star Wars work where this one didn't? What do you think is like the inherent difference between these two films? Considering right that Rebel Moon is basically it's it's a quasi Star Wars movie. So
Yeah.
why does one work and the other one doesn't, in your
I
opinion?
think it's hard to define because um there's one, obviously it's so much tied to nostalgia, and Star Wars did come first, and we always have to acknowledge that what came first and what's important in our hearts is always gonna be like, the original thing that we love. um it happened a lot to Dune wasn't successful really until this last version, and I still think that Dune is kind of like an extended perfume commercial. So I have, you know I don't know. And I wasn't able to talk to you and Mo on the Dune review because I hadn't watched it yet, and I was in finals or something at the time. But I think it was something about how hard George tried. Like, he had such a small budget, but he tried so
Hmm.
hard to make the film look a certain way, and the
Hmm.
originality that he brought to it, the design of those ships. I mean, the first time you see a Star Destroyer, you're just
Hmm.
like,
Hmm.
what am I watching? And the characters themselves is also what matters, because that found family that you have, that you become so attached to the Skywalkers, and then everything that happens throughout, and this, there's this long history of things that you is never really talked about, but it's always been in the background, and you're
Hmm.
kind of always curious about what's going on, and somehow in this one you don't really care. You
Right.
don't care about who the king and queen were. You don't care that they were murdered. You don't really feel for any of the characters. They're very one-dimensional. I
Hmm.
mean, that one character that was supposed to be Han Solo, I'm assuming, uh, there was, like, no redemption to
No,
him. He
it
just,
just
like,
gets shot in
betrays,
the
gets
face.
killed, there's
Yeah.
nothing going on, so there's this sense, you don't feel empathy really for any of the
Hmm.
characters, and in Star Wars, I mean, Darth Vader is one of the most notorious villains of cinematic history, and you still feel for him because eventually you get to meet Anakin. You know that
Hmm.
there's a tragic backstory. There is um
Nuance.
vindication
There's
of the
nuance. Yeah.
character.
Yeah.
There's like
Yeah.
all this, and it's and George Lucas wasn't the best writer to begin with, and he pulled off something better, but he had the story beats. I think this didn't really know what it was. It was ripping off from so many different things. You're ripping off Star Wars and Seven Samurai and the Avengers and himself, you
Hmm.
know. So I don't think it ever really knew what it even was. And I think that's one of the reasons that it doesn't really work.
There's one thing that you mentioned that I didn't bring up before, but thanks for reminding me. There's
Mhm.
something that I was thinking about while I was watching it, and it's the villain and how weak the villain is in terms of like
Yeah.
making you
Afraid.
either root for
Yeah.
because everyone's kind of rooting for Darth Vader because he's so cool, or
Right.
like hate because like oh this guy's so evil, and it's like the character one he doesn't look like like because he's not doesn't have a mask or whatever and just wearing Nazi uniform. It's like okay he's just a
Yeah.
dude
And we
one
only find out he's like mechanical at the end, but it's just like
and
that neural
yeah,
connection thing that doesn't really make him
it's
any more menacing.
which
So
which cool, I guess. But it was also like he was cartoonishly evil, which I think when you're cartoonishly evil, it just
it doesn't
doesn't
work.
land,
Yeah.
especially in a movie that's like, which I think is the problem with a lot of these Zack Snyder films lately, is that they take themselves so seriously that they're kind of funny. It's like what you were saying. It's like kind of a parody. It's like
Yeah.
it's taking itself so seriously that kind of backfires on itself. And I think
Yeah.
that was kind of the issue with this guy's villain. He's like so over the top evil and just killing people for no reason with the
Yeah.
bat or whatever, the cane, whatever the hell it was.
Oh, me and
Uh,
my husband were talking at the stick of destiny.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm just
It's like,
that I'm like I didn't even feel any menace from him at that point because I'm just like you're just a cartoon character, man. Like
yeah.
there's no threat or menace to you. You're a cartoon.
Hmm.
I don't know. You're Elmer Fudd. You know,
Yeah, and the
at this
king's
point.
gaze was like such a poor imitation of the Death Star that.
Yeah, yeah.
Ugh.
It's like it. I think that was a problem where Star Wars kind of acknowledged that it was a fairy tale
Yeah.
and was very fantastical about
And
all the
kind of
things that
makes
it
it
was doing.
it makes fun of itself, kind of,
Yeah,
but not to an extent that it takes you out of the situation. It'll be like, yeah, that is kind of ridiculous, but we're going with it. It's fine.
yeah. It's just like this is fantasy. It's a fairy tale.
And you feel
It's
immersed in
absurd.
it. It's a world that you can feel yourself immersed in and lose yourself in and become invested in
Right.
these characters. And here you're just like, eh,
Yeah, because everyone's so like everyone's so angsty and serious that like you like I think that's the important thing of a movie kind of like this where like you have to have characters that you empathize with
yeah,
and connect with and like kind of see yourself in. And I feel like all of these characters were so epic and they were supposed to be so serious and all these things that kind of detaches you from
yeah. And
them.
but somehow you present them as like so epic and rare, but they're still super one dimensional. So
They're a
it's
trope.
like
It's
a
like this.
conundrum that it's like, oh, superheroes, but we're all kind of the same.
Well, even what's her name? Like the main character's name, Sophia Boutella's character, who's the main character, but she doesn't really feel like a main character because she
Yeah.
doesn't really go through any journey. Like
No.
she was already a badass from the
Mhm.
military. She already had this backstory, and then she's like, "Well, I'm just I'm gonna go from A to B, and that's it." There was like no real
Well, I
journey
mean,
for her,
and
you
her
know.
backstory is almost exactly Gamora's backstory, and Gamora is a compelling character, and this one,
Well, because Gamora goes through stuff, you know. She has like
claro, yeah,
she has daddy issues. She has
hmm
sister issues. She has
hmm
like the worst Chris of all the Chris's,
true.
gunning for her affection, and that's traumatic in of itself. This should be a clip. That was funny.
The worst Chris of all the Chris.
Yeah,
It
that
is
was
true.
funny.
It is
Good.
true. You can
Uh,
keep it. Mhm.
that was good. Good job, me. I hope people listen up to this point because that was a good joke. Anyway, uh, I said, and I was like, "Wow, good job, me." Starting 2024, relatively good. But yeah, Gamora goes through stuff, and she
Yeah.
dies, but then she comes back, and then when she comes back, she's not the same Gamora because she's from the past. So it's very compelling because things
Mhm.
happen to her, but
Yeah.
nothing happens to Sophia's
Nope.
character. Like okay, let's recruit 7 samurai, and
Yeah.
then
And then come
okay,
back,
let's
and
wait for the
yay,
sequel now. So I felt
nothing,
nothing. Yeah.
nothing, nothing.
So yeah, let's stop being negative.
I know, because we usually try
It's
to look
done.
at things positively, but it's just really hard this time. So we're
So
just gonna leave it to you.
let's
You
just
can
say
let us know what you thought.
we didn't connect with it. Let's put it
Yeah,
that way.
yeah,
Let's be kind, rewind, and just say that it didn't connect with us. And if it connected with you, let
yeah.
us know why. Put it in the comments. Tell us like what you liked about it,
And
what we
we like
missed.
getting our minds changed too.
Yes,
We're super up for that.
I
Hmm.
definitely like hearing like a differing opinion to mine because then it's just like, oh, okay, I like to
Hmm.
know what things I missed. So if we missed something and you interpret something differently, let us know in the comments, email us, DM us,
Hmm.
whatever, so that we can have you on the show, and then you can debate us, and from a point of good faith. We're not gonna debate with bad faith
With
takes.
yeah, yeah, and actual haters.
Yeah, no, we don't got
Yeah.
time for that. We're in season 5. We don't got time for haters. We block and mute the haters. So that we just
Oh
move on.
yeah, we don't need that. Nah, we're too old for that shit. Anyway, I think we're done, Goose.
We're done with the first episode of the 5th season. Holy crap!
We are Triad of the Force. Remember to like, subscribe, leave a comment. We are just getting started on season 5. Stick around. 2024 is going to be good.
Mhm.
The SAG after strikes are done. They got mostly all of that they wanted. So, looking forward to the new stuff that we didn't get last year. So,
Yep,
hopefully,
yep.
we're going to be able to talk about more things this year, have more guests, have some fun, maybe a goose. So, please
Yeah.
stay tuned. And until next time, may the force be with you.